Well, good morning, everyone. I'll begin with a nice big howdy. I work for Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, and it's a tradition. If you're not familiar with Texas A&M, when somebody says howdy to you, you're supposed to say howdy back. So I want to see if everybody will participate with me on this. So howdy. Excellent. I love it. You warm my heart when it feels great when I get that howdy back. So thank you, and thank you for being here today. Let me tell you a little bit about what I do. Like I said, I work for Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. My job as the horticulture agent is to offer educational outreach opportunities on everything from trees to turf to tomatoes. So I get the opportunity to meet a lot of different people and share my passion of gardening and teach a little bit about everything. Yesterday, we just did a presentation on weeds and trying to tame your Texas weeds. So I love my job, and I get to teach about a whole different, all kinds of different things. The other thing that I have the privilege and honor of doing is I get to train our Brazoria County Master Gardeners. Has anybody ever heard of Master Gardeners? Ever heard of that? Yes, a few of you. Good to know. Our Master Gardeners receive their training from AgriLife Extension. And in exchange for that training, they go back out into the community, and they also share and teach and share their passion and their knowledge about all kinds of different gardening topics. So we really have a great group of master gardeners, and I enjoy getting to work with them. A lot of times we have a good handful of master gardeners that come out here to harvest and volunteer and help in the children's garden and teach some children's programs. So we're very, very blessed to be able to partner and work with David and all the wonderful people out here at Harvest. So thank you once again for having me here today. So that's a little bit about me. But let's get into our presentation this morning. First of all, I want to start by saying I am not an insurance agent. I am not a complete expert in this particular topic. I'm sure our previous speaker is much more of an expert. But what I want you to go away with today from this presentation is just a simple understanding of what crop insurance is, some of the terms that are associated with crop insurance, and how important it is to be aware of what is available out there to you. There are oftentimes lots of big words, big fancy terms when it comes to crop insurance. And so I just want to kind of dive into some of the basics and make sure that you go away here with a full knowledge and full understanding of what crop insurance is, because it can be very beneficial to small and beginning farmers like yourselves. All right, so when it comes to crop insurance and why it's important for you to have it, there are two big categories, more than two big categories, but a lot of things to keep in mind, especially when it comes to things like dealing with the weather. Here in Brazoria County, if you've lived here more than a year or two, you know that we can often deal with not only, major storms and hurricanes, but we can also deal with big rainstorms, lots of rain, days after days and inches after inches. That can certainly add up. We also, you may have to deal with insects when invading your crops in one form or the other. I'm sure you've all had to deal with that at some point. Our crops are also susceptible to certain types of diseases because we get so much rain in this area, and because it's hot and humid. The insect and the disease pressure can often be a lot stronger in this area, and so we've got to keep that in the back of our mind. Something else to keep in mind is that the market on your particular crop can vary and goes up and down depending on supply and demand, and so that can often be an issue that you also want to think about. And then of course just other types of natural disasters. Since we live on the coast, we're all probably very familiar with hurricanes and tropical storms and things like that, and so those can pop up, and it's important to be prepared for those. And so the reason we talk about crop insurance and why it's important is because any one of those particular things can happen, and it's very possible that one of those or more of those things could come in and just completely wipe your crop out. And so what crop insurance does is kind of like a protection, something to help you recover financially if we did have one of these events happen. And so something very important to think about when you're dealing with farming. And why? Because farming can be very risky. You can definitely have different years of production, whether you have a really good year and have heavy production. You can have a kind of an off year when it comes to your production, and that can be it can really vary from year to year. And so, if one year you have, you're producing, say, 2,000 pounds of tomatoes, and then you have a kind of a rough year the next year, and maybe you only produced 400 pounds, there's a financial risk there. You're not making as much profit as you did the previous year, and sometimes that crop insurance can come in and make up for that. So. Have you talked about risk management yet, or? Oh, you did. Okay, so he's probably the expert in that. But when it comes to risk management, it's not something that you can really eliminate. If I could, wave my magic wand and eliminate hurricanes, I would, because I am not a big fan of hurricanes. But I can't do that. I can't eliminate the risk. I can't eliminate insect and disease pressure when it comes to your crops. But what we can do is try and manage it and try and be prepared for it as best we can. All right, so that crop insurance, like I said, is going to help people recover from any type of losses. So this picture is showing the farmer kind of looking at his pepper crops and recovering after a hailstorm. Every now and then a hailstorm can certainly pop up. It's not something that we can control, but we can try and manage that risk of a hailstorm by having some type of coverage for that. So a lot of times when people think of crop insurance, they only think about weather situations. And that certainly is a big factor, certainly can be a big risk, especially here in Texas. Our weather can change at the drop of a hat. But production risk is probably one of the biggest ones. And that's what that means is that anything that is affecting what you're growing, whether it is weather, whether it is insects or disease or anything like that. Now, we've talked a lot about rain and storms, but if you remember back to, let's see, I think it was the summer of 22 and 23 that we had that severe drought. We had very droughty conditions. And so with that absence of rain and maybe you struggled with irrigation, and then on top of that drought situation, your production wasn't as good as it should be. You have a lot of those factors happening. Your expenses may go up because you have maybe the market has fluctuated. These are all different types of production risks that you might have to think about. Has anybody noticed if, the cost of fuel or the cost of fertilizer, the cost of seeds has gone up? Have you noticed that a little bit? I'm getting a few nods. So, inflation is going up. Things are becoming more expensive. And all of these things can affect the business part of your farm. And so there are crop insurance policies that actually protect your revenue as well. So it's, things that are going to protect you from financial losses, from weather-related losses, and it's basically like a risk management tool. Again, we're not going to be able to get rid of hailstorms and hurricanes and insects and things like that, but we can do our best to be prepared and to try and manage it. All right. So one of the things that's really important when it comes to crop insurance is the management of your farm. And what that includes is making sure that you are keeping proper records. That includes things like what your production rate was that year, how much you've paid for fertilizer or seeds or herbicides or fuel, different things like that. And so, like I said, crop insurance is basically just one tool. But it's important that you do your part in that aspect as well, by managing your farm correctly and make sure you are following all of the best practices when it comes to farming. So these records that you keep will definitely come in handy. In the case that you do have to file a claim, your insurance adjuster is most likely going to want to look at some of these records. It also helps to take pictures of your farm before, during, and after any type of event, whether that's a natural disaster or you've had a plague of mealybugs or something. I just kind of as an aside, I have this beautiful area in my backyard with a great big rock rose plant. If you're not familiar with rock rose, it's kind of a shrubby type of plant. It expands and is kind of somewhat aggressive, but it grows out quite a bit. It has these beautiful pink flowers that open during the day and they close at night. Well, that particular plant has just been infested with scale, and to the point where even after I've tried to make several applications of insecticidal soap, the scale is just taking over. And so I'm eventually going to have to just kind of really cut those down to the end. But things like that happen. And it's not something that, I expected, but I'm doing my best to manage it. And so if something like that were to happen on your farm, it's a good idea to make notes of when you are first seeing insect damage, take pictures of what you're seeing. It's all really great documentation to give to that agent or that adjuster if something were to happen. So in my case, I've taken pictures of my poor rock rose that keeps declining day after day, and I think I may have to cut my losses and trim it back. All right, so here are a couple of the common things that are covered if you were to have some type of loss. This is just a kind of a busy graphic that AI created for me, but it does kind of keep everything in one place where you can access it easily. So we've kind of gone over several of these things already. There are different policies that cover your crops for certain weather risks, whether that's drought or flood or hail. even freezing temperatures. We don't often get really hard freezes here in this area, but every so often, like back in 2021 with Winter Storm Uri, those hard freezes come, and it's very possible that you could have crop loss due to a freeze. We also briefly talked about the market and how the prices change and shift throughout the year. That's important to keep in mind. It also shows on here the different production risks that we've talked about, plant diseases, insects. Maybe you just have an off year, and maybe there was something going on in your soil, and you just had just an off year. They call it a poor stand, and just didn't get that growth that you wanted. That is something that could possibly be covered in one of these policies. And then again, in order to have some confidence in what you're purchasing, make sure you do your part on the back end by properly, keeping records. Talk to experts. Coming to classes like this is all really helpful as well. All right, so we want to know also what is insured. I'm assuming that a lot of you in here are small farmers. I think David mentioned that everybody has about an acre or so, give or take. And when it comes to the amount, to the size of your farm, everybody's going to have, a slightly different yield. Maybe you're growing different types of crops. I've worked with a group in Rocheron, some Rocheron farmers who grow a lot of water spinach in greenhouses. Does anybody grow that in here? Or got different crops? But what my point is that, everybody has a passion for something different. Those Rocheron farmers enjoy growing water spinach because it's something that their culture eats, and they sell that to local farmers markets. But keep in mind that whether you have a really large farm or a small one, or you have a really diversified crop, meaning maybe you don't just grow water spinach, but that you've got chickens on there as well, and you're selling your eggs. Maybe you have a really big area of fruit trees. There are options out there for any type of farm, whether you're a small farm or a really large one. Some people in Brazoria County who have a fairly active agricultural community may be growing hay or forage for their livestock animals. There are policies out there that cover that. So basically, I just want you to understand that no matter what it is that you are growing, there should be a policy out there for you to cover that. All right, so how crop insurance actually works is kind of laid out for us here in this particular slide. You're going to reach out to your insurance agent and tell them about the crop that you're growing, what it is that you plan to grow, whether it's the water spinach or your eggs or fruit or citrus, whatever the case may be. You're going to sit down and talk with them and choose your coverage. It's perfectly okay to ask lots of questions. Make sure you fully understand what it is that you're purchasing, what's covered, what's not covered, what your role is in this, and what is expected from you on your end. So in the case of some type of disaster that happens, you're going to file a claim. Your insurance agent should have phone numbers and websites and email addresses and all of that for you to be able to file that claim. That's where all of your record keeping is going to come in handy. They, I think, really appreciate photos of the farm, of the area that has been damaged. If you have photos, like I said, from before the damage occurred and after, that gives them a really good visual of what's going on there. That adjuster, that insurance adjuster will come out and visit your farm. They're going to want to see firsthand what type of damage is going on. They'll take their own pictures and maybe ask you a few questions as well. The adjuster will eventually go back to his office and fill out all their paperwork, complete the claim, and that's where they decide how much of a payment comes back to you. So that's kind of how that works in a nutshell. So when it comes to crop insurance, there are a couple key terms, maybe some big words that we don't all understand, and it's important to know exactly what those are. So when you talk about the premium is what you're paying for your insurance policy. You'll have some type of deductible that can vary on the type of coverage that you purchase, but the deductible is just the financial responsibility that you still have after you filed that claim. Your insurance agent can tell you exactly what your level of coverage is, how much is covered, and they will go into details about that so that you are fully aware of how much is covered. The indemnity, that is basically just a big word for the payment that you will receive if you were to file a claim. And then APH is the annual production history, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. So I kind of skimmed over this a little bit earlier in the presentation, but APH, or your actual production history, is a good way to tell what you've been producing in the past and what you've produced currently. So there may be a big difference from one year to the other. So for example, one year you may have produced 10,000 pounds of tomatoes, and the next year you're only able to produce 6,000 pounds. And so there are policies out there that can cover that, because if you're producing 4,000 pounds less, there definitely could be some financial loss there due to that production. All right, there's also two different types of insurance. One is called revenue insurance. The other is called yield insurance. And so there are two different approaches, and something that you should be aware of before you sit down and talk to your agent. So when it comes to revenue insurance, revenue is a way to cover any financial loss that you might have due to a loss in revenue. Very similar to the example we gave about the 10,000 pounds produced one year and the 6,000 pounds produced the next year. There's a loss in revenue there. And then the opposite would be some type of coverage for your yield. The yield is actually how many pounds, how many bushels, things like that you're actually producing for that year. And so if from one year to the other your production goes down, that might be something, yield insurance might be something to consider in that case. All right. When it comes to specialty crop farmers, it's important to know that a lot of times people, when they think of farmers, they think of maybe a hayfield or corn or cotton or sorghum. But there are policies for specialty crop farmers. Maybe you are growing a bunch of vegetables or citrus or cut flowers, or you're doing some type of nursery work inside. There are policies and coverages for people like you that have more of a specialty type of crop. So don't think because, I don't grow hay or cotton or acres and acres of grain that you can't be covered. There are policies available for these types of specialty crops. And so that's where something called whole farm revenue protection comes in. This is for somebody that maybe you're growing water spinach in a greenhouse, and you've got chickens in another area, and you've got a small orchard of fruit trees as well. Whole farm revenue protection is something that's going to protect the whole farm in the case of some type of loss. So there's plenty of options for you. Don't think again just because maybe you don't fall into the regular farmer category that there's not something out there for you. Ask questions, reach out to your insurance agent, and maybe covering the whole farm is something that may be needed for you. All right. So when it comes to pasture, rangeland, and forage, if any of you are growing hay or forage type materials for your livestock, it's important to know that your insurance agents take into account how much rain has fallen when it comes to this type of production. So if we've had a really good year in rain, you probably won't need to file any type of a claim. But if we've had one of those droughty years and you're producing some type of forage materials, they are going to look at how much rain we have or haven't had. That's kind of how they categorize that. It's important to know that there are, other opportunities out there for you as well, and assistance with paying for your coverage. And so I would encourage you to check out the USDA website. A lot of times there are programs out there that can assist with your crop insurance. Do you have anybody from USDA today or not today? So I'm sure just a simple Google search will get you to USDA, or I'm sure David and his staff here can get you to that website and see what is available for you out there. And again, we've already really covered this, how important it is to keep your receipts, keep good records, keep photos of your farm and crops in case there is some type of natural disaster or some other type of need where you need to file a claim. And we've talked about filing that claim. And again, I've covered this as well. It's important that when you go and talk to your insurance agent, that you write those questions down. Be sure and ask whatever questions that you have of that agent, so that you're fully aware and fully informed of what you're purchasing and how and what it covers. And then as we close out our presentation today, I just want to go over a couple different myths that you may have heard when it comes to crop insurance. You may have heard that it's too expensive, but that's where that USDA program comes in. There are different programs through the USDA where they could help subsidize some of those costs. So be sure and check that out when you have time. The other myth is that only large farms qualify for crop insurance. And again, we've talked about this, how, even smaller farms, even diversified farms do qualify, and there are different policies out there to serve each of your needs. And then finally, here are just a few other resources that you can check out if you want to get some more information, more details about crop insurance. Texas A&M AgriLife Extension has a great site there where you can get more information. Check out USDA and other beginning farmer resources and different terms about crop insurance if I've still left you confused by any chance. So with that, that is just kind of a basic look at what crop insurance is and some of the terms that are important for you to know when it comes to crop insurance. Like I said at the beginning, I am not an insurance agent. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just want you to be completely familiar with the terms and what is available out there to you. So